Welcome to a special edition of Handicapping with Stats Race Lens. I'm Dan Tordjman with America's Best Racing, joined by my good friends, TVG's Christina Blacker, and from Equibase, national handicapper Ellis Starr. Well, guys, we've got a huge weekend of Kentucky Derby preps on tap. We'll be going coast to coast, starting in Kentucky and New York, where we'll dig into the Wood Memorial and the Bluegrass Stakes. And then we'll be going to Christina's backyard, Santa Anita, for the Run Happy Santa Anita Derby. Christina, great to see you as always. So much action on tap. Give us a little preview here of which of the three big Derby preps coming up this weekend you think might present the best wagering opportunity.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I was really excited kind of looking through the past performances. It's just going to be such a great weekend in general with Keeneland kicking off and then Santa Anita Derby, as you say, and the Wood. But as I was going through specifically the Derby preps, when you have essential quality in the Bluegrass, he's going to be a short price. But I think in California, now that we have Life is Good, unfortunately on the sidelines, that really changed the complexion of the Santa Anita Derby. It didn't scare anybody away. We have what is one of the fullest fields that we've had in many, many years here for this race. And I think there's some horses that are kind of under the radar in there. I have a feeling Ellis and I might agree in terms of pedigree plays, but I think Santa Anita Derby, if you're not all about Medina Spirit, you're going to hit a price with one of the other competitors.
Yep. Looking forward to digging into that race. Ellis, for those who haven't used Stats Race Lens, and we're looking at the interface here, why is it so important to use a tool like this on a weekend as big as this one?
Well, first of all, it helps you cherry pick. So if you set up your angles or use the pre-selected angles, you have horses and races which you can pick among the 11 at Keeneland, the 10 at Aqueduct, the 10 at how many there are at Santa Anita, I forget, but 30 odd races. So that's one thing. And then for the races that you do want to dig into, there's ways to set templates up on your PPs to show only certain things or highlight past performance lines, and then quickly dive into research, which is one thing we're going to do here. For example, we'll be talking a lot about sires that produce horses that win stakes from 9 to 10 furlongs, which is now through the Derby. And Stats Race Lens enables you to set those up quickly. You have them for the future, for the rest of the Derby preps, and for other big races throughout the summer.
Yeah, customized searches, pace projection, searches on trainers and their stats and history in these races. We're going to dig into all of that, and it's with Stats Race Lens. If you've never used the product, now would be the time to sign up for a limited time, 50% off an unlimited quarterly subscription, 50% off, open to everyone, promo code Derby Trail 2021. And as I said, if you've never used it, there's a new customer bonus that you can get in on. Tri-State Stats Race Lens for 1 month for $1. You use promo code SRLM1E, SRLM1E if you're a new customer. Try Stats for a month for $1. And again, if you want that 50% unlimited quarterly subscription, 50% off, that's open to everyone. Use Derby Trail 2021 as your promo code. All right, let's get into some of the action. We're going to start at Keeneland. The Bluegrass Stakes is the feature, race 11. And as Christina alluded to a moment ago, we've got a pretty heavy favorite in this race, an essential quality for good reason. The horse is undefeated, has won twice at Keeneland, and also might hold a bit of a pace advantage in a race that may not have much pace. Christina, we're going to have to get creative here. How are we making money in the Bluegrass Stakes?
Yeah, I think we are. I think as far as our three Derby preps, this is going to be the shortest price post-time favorite. And as you say, essential quality, he's 4 for 4. He's a champion. I take nothing away from him. He could very easily go out there, hit the front end, and just run these horses off their feet on Saturday. But I'm trying to find a horse that I think has maybe the ability to come up with a breakout race. And for me, it's the 2, Untreated. Todd Pletcher trains the son of Nyquist. We've had a lot of buzz about the Nyquist offspring and how many, greatest stakes winners he has had. I want to start first, actually, with the chart from his debut race. So this was back, as you can see, on January the 9th. It was the 5th race at Gulfstream Park. And we're looking right now at the chart from the Tampa Bay, his race at Tampa in his maiden breaking score. But if we can just go back to his debut, which was January 9th, you can see down there. So he's going to finish 6th in here, kind of a lackluster performance in the 9-horse field. But if you take a look at the chart, you can see there were 4 next out winners from this race, and they're circled for you right there on the product. So The top horse circled in green, let's open the PPs quickly for Candyman Rocket. If you're not familiar with Candyman Rocket, you can see right here, he'd actually come back and win the Sam F. Davis. Now, he wasn't stellar in the Tampa Bay Derby, but for the immediate form from Untreated in that debut race, it was very good. So we can close this chart. And then let's take a look at the replay from his maiden breaking score. Again, at Tampa, it's that March 6th race that you'll see the, let's go back to the Tampa race if we can, which is the second race on his PPs. There you go. This was a real breakout performance already, I think, as far as any of his speed figures go. If you look at Equibase speed figures, he took a really big step forward this day. And one of the things that I really like about this horse is that as big as he is, and we can actually just fast forward to kind of his move around the backstretch because we'll be watching replays all day here. He makes a big move kind of down the middle of the backstretch. There he is circling up the 8 horse. He's in that pink cap. That's how they mark horses at Tampa. The saddle towels, same colors as the caps on the riders. And I mean, he just inhales this field. He's going to draw clear by 8 3/4 of a length in the end. I understand he was expected to win. He was a heavy favorite, but this is the kind of race that I think really sets him up to continue a very fast upward trajectory. Todd Pletcher is his conditioner. And there you can see, as I was saying, he's big, he's leggy, but he's not a heavy horse. He's light enough on his feet that I think he still has a little bit of growing to do and has, you know, enough kindness kind of on himself to continue and keep up with some of the more tactical horses, like a horse like Essential Quality, who might be pretty close. Let's go to the true odds page just quickly here. One of the figures that I really love in any race is the late pace figure. So let's filter this to late pace. Untreated finishes his races pretty quickly. As you can see, he's at the top of the list. He's very close to Essential Quality, but I think that puts this horse in a position to maybe be a threat to him. He's 10 to 1 on the morning line. And then the last thing I want to look at with him real quickly is just a stat on Todd Pletcher himself. It wasn't actually as strong as I thought, but in all stakes races for Todd Pletcher with 3-year-old males. And so as you first kind of pull up Todd Pletcher's name, you'll see some other stats that are going to come up for you. But if you filter to what we've kind of preset in here, 3-year-old males, all stakes, he is 19%. And this is a huge sampling, Dan. We're talking about 45 winners from 243 starts, 47% in the money. So I'm looking at Untreated as a potential upsetter for a couple of reasons in here, as you can see.
Yeah, it's definitely Pletcher's bread and butter. We saw him last weekend with Known Agenda winning the Florida Derby. Ellis, I know you like this horse a little bit as well, and I know you like a horse that I really like. Not the biggest of prices, but a good alternative. I'll let you get into both of those. Ellis, we may need your sound.
Yeah.
There you go. Much better.
Hello. I definitely do like Untreated and talk about him in a minute. Christina made a lot of the points that I'm going to hit on, but now we're going to go get Highly Motivated, who I think is really, I'm not going to say the horse to beat, but in my opinion, he is probable to win as Essential Quality, and therefore a much better value at 7 to 2 morning line, even a little less compared to Essential Quality, who will be the odds-on favorite. So we're going to first look at just basically his PPs, and that's what I go to first, like anybody would look at PPs. And you look at that pattern of ascending Equibase speed figures last year, starting with 87, 89, 104. We'll stop there because that was the Nyquist Stakes. And you'll notice if you look at that, that was the Keeneland. And I thought about this for a while. And I really, truly believe, and I don't really read a lot of articles of trainers talking because they're usually talking to owners and not to fans, but I truly believe Chad Brown was thinking of the Bluegrass when he put him in the Nyquist. He wanted him to get a race at Keeneland as a 2-year-old. And I think that's phenomenal. Then he rests, waits for his 3-year-old campaign. He comes back in the Gotham. He earns a 102 figure. Well, if you assume a horse is going to improve, second time off the layoff, that 102 is going to be obliterated past the 104 with a new career best in this race. And I think it all sets up for a really good race. And also, one thing was interesting. I always check these races we talked about at the beginning, sires. So I always look at all the sires, and I'm more narrow than Christina on my sire and my trainer stats. So in this case, I went very specifically looking for sires for dirt 9 to 10 furlongs. All I care about is these last sets of Derby preps and the Derby. 3-year-olds only. Sometimes I do male, sometimes I do both, and graded stakes. And in this case, if you sort on official finish, you will see names we all know. First of all, Mandaloon is on this year's Derby Trail. Last year's Derby winner, Authentic. Also Owendale and Audible. I can stop there. There's no question that the breeding says that Highly Motivated can get the distance and this race and the Derby. And now we'll go to Untreated, go back to the PPs. And Christina made all the cases. She showed the video, which is great. If you look at that speed figure for number 2 Untreated, you will see a 101 figure. If you remember, Highly Motivated had a 104 last year in the Nyquist, a 102 to come back, should get better. We'll get to Essential Quality in a second, but he's got a 105. So just comparing, again, it's not the end all, but it's a comparative. Any improvement off the 101 makes Untreated right there with the other ones, and he's 10 to 1, of course, morning line. What's really important here is you look at the right at the comment where it says 4 wide advanced, hand urged. And you normally won't see that in a race. If you actually go and look at that, it's really important to consider that he wasn't really asked in the last part. And Christine already showed when we talked the video, that swooping move from 7th to 1st in that PP line. He just passed horses with the slightest cue from Luis Saez. Saez, of course, is going to ride Essential Quality, so Joe Rosario is getting on. Real quick, as a comparison, we have to compare always against the favorite, whether a favorite is vulnerable or false. In this case, Essential Quality is not, but he's not a standout either. The 3 to 5 morning line makes him tough to bet as a win bet. His speed figures are also on the same ascending pattern, 88, 95, 101, 105. That 105 compares favorably with the 104 that we showed that Highly Motivated earned last year in the Nyquist, which he's going to improve upon. And we don't need to go to this, but Brad Cox also, I checked his stats second off the layoff, and I'm looking for comparisons, even though Essential Quality won his race off the layoff. This is second off the layoff, and Brad Cox already won with Mandaloon and with Travel Column, second on the layoff. So you got to assume Essential Quality is going to improve. And those are my contenders in the Bluegrass.
Yeah, Essential Quality is going to be tough. Ellis, I want to back up your case for Highly Motivated just briefly, and that's by just showing the start of the most recent race there at the Gotham Stakes. You just need to really watch the first quarter mile of the race or so. Highly Motivated is going to be the 3 horse. Now, mind you, the horse went off as a huge favorite. And if you can take a close look just at that 3 gate right there, that 3 hole, you're going to see this horse come out a little delayed, a little behind the rest of them. He gets a little squeezed here. And then what he's going to try to do is get down to the rail and try to secure position. And then it gets even worse here because he gets checked and then shuffles back here as well. So there it is right there. There you go. That's him kind of taken back, losing some ground there. And we don't have to watch any more of this, but take our word for it. That cost him the lengths that it probably would have made a difference at the later stages of the races when he ends up losing by under 2 lengths to Weyburn and Crowded Trade. Now, Weyburn and Crowded Trade are horses that we're going to talk about a little bit when we get into the Wood Memorial. So we'll see how that race holds up. Highly Motivated, I'm with you, Ellis. I think there's a lot to like here based on pedigree, as he touched on with Into Mischief, and also even some of the company in that Nyquist Stakes, beat 3 next out winners. Very impressive effort there. I do want to briefly now, don't hate me, guys. Don't hate me. I want to pull something up on Untreated. This is, I mean, it goes to show you again, just sort of the depth and the breadth and how precise you can get with these searches, with these trainer searches. I don't know if we have this search, on standby here, but I did a separate search on Todd Pletcher over the past 5 years with his 3-year-olds in dirt routes. And I was looking specifically for maiden winners in their most recent race going into graded stakes races. And surprisingly, I found these numbers, 0 for 22. Christina, you hate me. I know you hate me now for pulling this out.
It is. It's actually, I'm shocked, to be honest. I mean, I would not have expected that as the outcome, but I think you have to pay attention to it, and you have to sometimes let the data, steer you one way or the other. We'll see if Untreated can become the horse that, debunks what the trend has been for Fletcher lately. And maybe he's just as good of a horse, but he's running into essential qualities. So, he might add to this stat, and you never know that. But I think what it might be a reflection of, Dan, is the fact that when you enter a horse like this, you're playing catch up a little, right? This is a horse that ideally Pletcher might have wanted to break his maiden sooner, get an allowance race in there and be able to kind of follow a more traditional pattern. But it's that time of year. And if you've got a horse with talent, you kind of have to throw him to the wolves. And I think that's where we're at with Untreated.
I have a counter, Dan.
You're going to bring up Chad Brown, right?
No,
and that's a good point.
I'm gonna ask our lovely producer here to switch to the other research I didn't show, which is the trainer criteria last 3 years, dirt 9 to 10 furlongs winners, and you will see only a couple horses on this query, but both of them are this year's Derby. This year's Derby trail, Todd Pletcher, 30 last month, 3-year-olds only, dirt 9 to 10 furlongs, males, winner last out in graded stakes, and guess what? Known Agenda shows up, as does Sainthood, who ran a bang-up second in the Jeff Ruby. So
checkmate. Well played, Ellis. Well played, Ellis.
I also have one quick thing I forgot to say. Highly Motivated's connections are highly motivated because he has 0 points or very few, and then 100 points is a big deal right now. Where on the other hand, we haven't discussed this yet. Essential Quality has 40 points per second will get him in the gate. It could very well be, and I'd love to hear the other opinions here. The instructions might be, don't use everything. We got a race in a month, where for some other horses, the instructions are going to be win because second's not good enough to get in the gate.
Yeah, no, that's something you always have to consider. I think, again, going back to the Florida Derby last week, we saw with Greatest Honor, a horse who came in with enough Derby points. I'm not saying that they tapped the brakes on the training or that they didn't want the win, but the reality was the horse didn't need to win and finished third, opened the door for Known Agenda to win that race. So I think that's a variable you do have to consider here, not something you're necessarily find in any form of research. I do want to mention briefly just a couple of price horses here for those of you out there looking to play exactas and trifectas. I like the one horse Hidden Stash a little bit. This is a horse that looks pretty green and immature to me. They haven't gotten to the bottom of him yet, as far as I'm concerned. Charted a pretty wide course in the Tampa Bay Derby last out. In spite of that, almost won the race, kind of flattened out a little bit late. I think Hidden Stash is a horse at a price that you want to look at. 20 to 1 morning line, you may get something close to that. So that's a little bit of a price. Guys, did you want to throw out another price quickly before we move on to some of the other races? I know we've got a couple of other Keeneland races we want to touch on before we move on to Aqueduct.
Well, I'll just say on I think one of the blogs I did, I threw in a trifecta, which is basically these 3 horses, highly motivated, untreated, and Essential Quality in first and second, and I threw in Hidden Stash and Rombauer and Hush of a Storm in third. I could make the case they could run second maybe, but it's going to be tough.
Christina?
Yeah, Dan, I think you're on the right horse as far as the price. I liked Hidden Stash a little bit too, and I think he's definitely, one of those that's going to drop back. He'll be making that one run, but whether or not that's good enough, I think it's definitely good enough to hit the board.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to a race a little bit earlier on in the card here. It's going to be the Shakertown Stakes. Ellis, with the boldest play of the day, we could have chosen any race from this undercard, and Ellis chooses the 13-horse, 5.5 furlong turf sprint. So Ellis, enlighten us and give us a good price here at least.
Well, that's me. I like races in which I go big or go home. The good news is there'll be no heavy favorite in this race. The bad news is it's very likely to be wrong because there's a lot of good horses, and there's a lot that can take a licking and keep on ticking in terms of being on the lead and continuing on to run well. I like number 5, Turn to Side. We're going to go to him first, the 5, Turn to Side, and look at his PPs. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm looking for the best representative race in his PPs. And I think that is the race on November 28th of last year, the Turf Sprint Aqueduct Turf Sprint Championship, which he won. You can see that highlighted in green, that 113. That's a career best Equibase speed figure. And I think he ran really well. He stalked in third in that race, which I think is great because he doesn't need the lead. He switched barns from Linda Rice to Mark Casse. He had a race, which is February, so that was off a 4-month layoff. Now he's second off the layoff. That 113 is competitive. He's a decent price at 6 to 1. Going quick down to number 13, Bound for Nowhere, who we were showing just a second ago. I mean, he just shows up every time. This is a 7-year-old. He's lightly raced. He loves firing fresh. No question about him firing fresh. He was go down to his. You can set lifetime PPs, by the way, with Stats Race Lens, but you don't need to here. But if you go down to his race in April 7th of 2018, you'll see at Keeneland, that was the Shakertown, says the stakes name on there. Go back up a little bit to the Shakertown in 2019. He was second, April 6th, 2019. He was second, beating the neck to Imprimi, who's back in this race. And then last year in the rescheduled Shakertown in July, he was third, beating the neck. He shows up every time. He loves Keeneland. If you go up, of course, the regular, you can see his summary record at Keeneland is 5 races, 2 wins, 1 second, 1 third. Of course, they're all on the grass. He gets a great outside post, which means he can stalk as well. And the last one, of course, is number 2 in for me, who won this race last year. If you go to him and look, you'll see also a 113 Equibase speed figure for the Run Happy Turf Sprint at Kentucky Downs, in which he ran well. Then he ran badly in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, came back and won the stakes at Gulfstream in January, then ran very well to a horse named Critical Way, who's in here, but Critical Way is a need to lead type. He's going to be tiring late. So that's how I see these 3. Basically, they all line up about the same. The value for the win bets on turn aside, and I'll use all 3 in exotics.
All right. Again, bold move going with the Shakertown, the 5.5 furlong turf stakes race on the undercard here on Bluegrass Stakes Day. Always a fun race and could lead to some chaos in terms of prices. If you like price shopping, you might find it here. I'm going to go to the 7th race for my bonus race on this card. It's going to be the Commonwealth Stakes, going 7 furlongs on the dirt. And this race is filled with a number of horses who, at least to my eye, don't really love to win. Flagstaff is one of them. You see that horse right there at the top. Every time I bet Flagstaff, I know I come back with less money. So I'm leaving Flagstaff. Goodbye, Flagstaff. The other thing that stood out to me about this race was that the pace could be a little softer than expected for this kind of race. And you've got a horse in Special Reserve, the 4 horse, who seems capable of getting the jump on them and potentially stealing this race on the front end. You're also going to get a good price there. But the horse, to me, when you look at sort of the overall makeup of the race and where this horse is headed and momentum and reading context, that sort of jumps off the papers. The 2 horse Hidden Scroll, who has traditionally, wait, don't laugh, this horse has been a bit of a punchline. I think times are about to change with Hidden Scroll, because now you notice that his trainer is Brad Cox. And so the laughing stops with Brad Cox. Made the debut last out at Oaklawn and looked like a completely different horse. You can see the Equibase speed figure there jumping from 95 in the prior race to a 101. So that's for one. This horse was absolutely hand-ridden to the wire. And additionally, you see on the right side there, that trouble indicator, the horse steadied as well. So the horse had trip trouble, was hand-ridden to the wire, and won by 2 1/4 lengths. Could have probably won by 5 to 7 lengths easily. So that's the first thing. Now, one thing to consider is you look at the race, and it was over a muddy track. If you go a little earlier into Hidden Scroll's career, the reason why there was so much buzz around this horse early is because on a sloppy track on debut, you won by 14 lengths. So the question is, was it the track? Was it the barn change? What is it? I'm going to go with barn change. and the reason is a bit of research you could do on Brad Cox here using Stats Race Lens. Over the past 3 years, I was interested in seeing in dirt sprints, taking horses from allowance wins like that one into stakes races. What kind of results do we get with Brad Cox? So there you see 35 starts, 7 wins, which is good enough for a 20% win percentage. That's winning in horse racing, and 23 in the money. So these horses are pretty much, consistently here, 66% of the time they're hitting the board, and they're winning at a decent enough clip to make you raise an eyebrow. Now, you could also look at some of the more recent winners he's had doing this. You could sort by date right there, as we just did, so you could see them. How are they doing recently? And you could see a couple of second place finishers. But the horse, the Mary Rose, 4 races back, look at the pattern. It's the same exact thing. Allowance win from William Van Meter into the stakes race there and wins it pretty handily. Then prior to that, a horse that we remember from last year, Monday Call, same situation. You get the horse moving over, and then you get an allowance win, and from that, a 7 1/4 length win. Look, Brad Cox does this, and he can take these horses who have been maybe kind of middling, and take them to another level. Like Knicks Go comes to mind, obviously, a horse who showed incredible flashes early on, kind of had hit a lull in his career, went to Brad Cox, and suddenly Knicks Go is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So look, I think you got to consider that with Hidden Scroll. For me, this would be a single in all of your late tickets, but I would also use Special Reserve, who I mentioned is going to be, I think, tactically at an advantage on the front end, where I don't see many horses in here who want the speed. A horse I respect and love, but who doesn't love to win much. The 7-horse Hog Creek Hustle is a horse I'd use in your combinations, but again, he's pace dependent. So I'm a little concerned about him getting up for the win, but I'd use him in exotics. So
Dan, you know how I like trouble, right?
Bring it.
So go back to the PPs. I want to comment about something, and this was a lot of activity on Twitter earlier this year. If you'll notice, especially after that 11 length win, the big races, they tried the Florida Derby, then they tried turf, and there's no knock at all on a Hall of Fame parent like Bill Mott. But for whatever reason, whether the connections, the owner, the manager said, hey, try something different with the horse, he just got sour doing that other stuff. And it wasn't just the trainer change. This is what I want to make very clear, in my opinion. It was the horse, again, showed flashes of brilliance early. They got cheeky with some stuff. Horses get upset. They want to perform when they're not happy. You're asking the horse to run on turf and other stuff. It's nothing to do with Mott's training. It's just the direction that the connections took, and then back on dirt, voila, back to top form. It wouldn't matter, I think, who the trainer is, just happens to be one of the most up-and-coming trainers in the country, and Hidden Scroll is back in the top form. I just want to mention, if people wonder why, you'd move a horse from a Mott to a Cox, it has nothing to do with anything except maybe the horse just needed a new environment to get back to his old self.
No, that's a good point. I'm glad you pointed that out. And we'll see how it unfolds. Like, again, for me, history, especially recent history, dictates that you certainly can't leave Hidden Scroll off your ticket. This is not, to my eyes, the horse. Look, and the horse has had a history of breaking poorly and kind of making his own trouble. So you might think, man, do I want to single this horse? I think you can. I think you can. I mean, he's shown a certain focus and sharpness, and also, well, you notice that he did in that last race, which he hadn't done previously, is that he won from off the pace. So this is a horse who now, even if he breaks poorly, you got a bit more confidence that he can win from off the pace. All right, we're going to move on to Aqueduct. As promised, we're going to hit all the big Kentucky Derby preps this weekend. And at Aqueduct, unlike at Keeneland, where we had a heavy favorite in essential quality, we've got a bit more parity in the top of the Wood Memorial. I think you can make the case any one of 3 horses potentially go off favorite in this Wood Memorial. You got a couple of Chad Browns, one of which we talked about earlier, Crowded Trade, and then Risk Taking as well. And then you've got a horse coming in who's sort of the up and coming, fast rising, but again, only 2 races under his belt horse coming from Gulfstream, and that's Prevalence. Christina, I know you like that horse a little bit. Tell us more about him and what you like about him.
I do. I want to start with Prevalence in here. And, I think that off of his last race, so much was expected of him, and I felt like he was a little bit criticized for that victory, which I don't think was fair. I mean, the horse won by 3 lengths, and I think, coming off a debut performance where he wins by 8.5, everyone is expecting him to just blow the doors off the field. I think Brendan Walsh knew exactly what he was doing, was just trying to take care of him, get him through the next step, give him another little bit of education. And then you move along and you try 2 turns and you go on against tougher company. Let's start with the replay of his most recent race. And so this is at Gulfstream Park. Both of his races have been in South Florida this summer. That's where he's been spending the winter there at Palm Meadows. And this is going to be that race that I think he just got a little too much flack for. And it wasn't fair to the horse, I think. Let's go up to the quarter pole and just kind of watch the move as he turns for home, because Tyler Gaffalione knows this horse. He rode him in the debut. He doesn't have the chance to get on him in the mornings because of COVID rules right now. The jockeys aren't allowed to be there in the mornings to work horses. But I think it was important that, he had that first experience with him. And now they rejoin up again as he's your 10 cent on the dollar favorite in this particular race. So he's going to just go right on by these horses. And it was a good enough group. Allowance Company at Gulfstream Park. And this is the championship meet. These are good horses. He rolls up. He does this all on his own. Gaffalione has not asked him one bit. As they come just past the quarter pole, he's going to kind of look over his shoulder, the jock will, just to see if anybody's coming. Nobody's really coming. And he sets him down. I don't think he really asked him. Never has to go to the stick, shakes the reins a few times, and you get a good response from a horse that has some acceleration, has plenty left in the tank. These are all signs of a horse that is developing at a good pace. The progression of what you're seeing in his first two starts, very, very good. He's a homebred for Godolphin. We know how well their homebreds have been doing. Mystic Guide, Essential Quality will be running this weekend. One of the other things that I wanted to just check on with regard to him really quickly, he's by Medaglia d'Oro, so he has the pedigree there. But then enrichment, she's by Ghost Sapper. I just opened her PPs because I was, curious, and I'm that way kind of with a lot of the Godolphin mares. And one of the things that I note, she wasn't the best on the racetrack, but she's out of a Seeking the Gold mare. So there is plenty of stamina in this pedigree, top and bottom. That was kind of all I needed to know with regard to her, as I'm kind of projecting this will be his first test around 2 turns, his first test at the 1 1/8. And then the other horse that I wanted to mention real quickly is Dynamic One. So Dynamic One is the 5, and he has run 4 times so far for Todd Pletcher. It looks like he's kind of taken a little longer to come around. But I did notice, and you can see it from the running lines, and also if you're looking at the charts, but he was second to greatest honor very early on in his past performances. That second start, his first attempt around 2 turns. It's a good race. You see a couple next out winners out of there. And I think the fact that he could be right there with one of the highly rated horses in Florida goes a long way for Dynamic One. The other thing I wanted to show is the replay from his last race, quarter pole home. Now, this was a test at the 1 1/8 right here at Aqueduct. This is all, going to bode well for him this weekend as he goes for the same distance and configuration. It was a slower race. It wasn't the quickest early fractions. He was right off of that slow pace. And so he should have gone on to win like this. But I just like the fact that he's a horse that, answered the question. He's 5 1/4 lengths clear. He looks like, the typical Todd Pletcher type. He's growing, he's getting bigger, he's getting stronger this time of year. And Jose Ortiz is going to jump aboard this weekend. So of the two, Dan, I think that Prevalence to me shows a little bit more potential for brilliance for one of those breakout type races. But I'm just not going to take anything away from Dynamic One, because I think he might be kind of coming around at the right time and probably has a little bit more left to give than what we saw in that last race.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I like you pointing out, giving a price to people to consider here with Dynamic One. You mentioned the running lines, the company lines, rather, and greatest honor there. Wayburn, who's a horse that I know Ellis likes, and he's about to elaborate on a little bit more here momentarily. I did want to say, though, before we move to Ellis, if you look at that race that we just showed with Prevalence, we showed you the stretch run and how easily he did it. If you watch the beginning of that race, too, they try to pull some shenanigans. You got to watch it. Junior Alvarado actively stays straight for the first quarter mile to not let Prevalence cross over and tries to float him as wide as possible. So and look, Tyler with the ultimate confidence on the horse doesn't budge, right? He's like, all right, I'll hang out here for as long as I need to, because I'm still so much better than your horse. Prevalence, I think, is a very strong call from you, Christina. I'm completely with you on Prevalence. Ellis, I know you got cases to make for several horses, but Wayburn in particular, who we mentioned comes out of a race with Dynamic One, on debut at least there. I feel like we're selling this short horse a little bit. This horse short a little bit. He won the Gotham Stakes, for God's sake.
Yeah. Before I get to him, though, I want to start with, we talked about with the Bluegrass, you always look at the favorite, right? Is the favorite beatable? Is the favorite a horse that's worth taking a shot against, or just the odds too low? And with Essential Quality, you've got a fairly legitimate favorite at a poor price. What you've got here with risk taking, real quick, go to number 4, risk taking in the PPs, 5-2. I think you have a vulnerable favorite. And I've been trying to find an answer. For the life of me, I don't know why this horse sat out the Gotham. I do not like the fact he's been off 2 months when most of the horses, except a couple coming back from layoffs. Brooklyn Strong has been off since the Remsen, so that's 4 months off. I wouldn't touch him. But risk taking at 5-2, you have to question why he missed a race. You don't. 8 weeks is a lot. And also, no knock on Christina's, but I just drew a line in the sand, starting with the Florida Derby. I'm not picking any horse that broke its maiden last out. I loved him earlier in the year. I just can't do it at this time. So now I go to Weyburn. This is what makes the race very playable, because Weyburn, I didn't pick him. I'll admit I had no interest in him last time out at 46-1. But you can see that race. You can see it was by far a new career best, 105. The Gotham historically has been a pretty good prep for the Wood. That layoff was 3 months. He's coming back a month later, so I don't think he's going to regress. And one thing that's interesting is we'll look at Jimmy Jerkins. And if you click on Jimmy Jerkins, I have some criteria, individual research, really easy. This is the power of Stats Raceland, showing people all things they can do. I have Jimmy Jerkins dirt route graded stakes, 5 years. He's only had 46 starts, but look at that nice record, 12 wins. Now, if you take Weyburn out, the 114 ROI is mostly to Weyburn. But before that, you've got Rocketry, Preservationist, Shaman Ghost, FNX, Unified, I should say. A lot of good horses here. Jimmy Jerkins is no slouch, and I didn't bring this up as a thing to show, but I thought it was really interesting when you think of all of Chad Brown and Todd Pletcher's success. A Stats Lens query I ran on dirt route graded stakes the last 5 years. It surprised the heck out of me. Similar to the one you showed earlier of 0 for 22, Pletcher is 11 for 139, and Brown is 10 for 45. He's won with 6 of 24 horses. Pletcher's won with 9 out of 70. Again, this is dirt route graded stakes, all ages. In spite of the millions and millions of dollars they do, they're Brown particularly better on grass, and more reasons for me to kind of ignore risk taking here, even though I'm going to get to the other horse, Crowded Tail, which we'll go to now. So we'll go back to PPs and Crowded Tail. Look, if I like Weyburn, I got to like Crowded Tail. Great pattern. Sprint route, highly motivated, who ran third, is looking for greener pastures, maybe not, in Kentucky. And these two, and they both got a 105 Equibase figure, which stands out, and I think they'll improve upon it. So I like those two. The only other comment I want to make about Prevalence, you covered it mostly. Go to the PPs for number 6 Prevalence. You will hardly ever see this, but one of our best chart callers in the country, also used to be writer for the forum, Dave Litvin, made this comment. If you go to the end and look, it says urge past wire. That prompted me to go look at the chart. So if you click on the chart, you'll see the footnote. And the second line in the footnote says Prevalence says, then was urged to continue for an 83rd mile or so after the finish. That is saying, oh, we want him to run a mile and an eighth. I mean, this is a horse that ran a mile and an eighth in a mile race, basically. Maybe not full out, but almost. So it shows so much of the intent. And don't forget, Brendan Walsh trained a horse named Maxfield last year. So I have no doubt of having a horse that can run at this level.
All right. Well, plenty to consider there. And we are doing like a lot of like psychoanalysis here, and, what are the intentions of the trainers? Some of it you could actually find with some of these horses who only have a few races. You could find out why they were either late getting to the races or why they started and then stopped. To the horse you mentioned on the rail, Brooklyn Strong. I mean, this is a horse who looked great last year. Has all this time off now, and if you read between the lines, it sounds like he's had some health issues, and so that another reason not to use that horse. I mean, I'm a Brooklyn guy. I want Brooklyn Strong to be in the Derby. I mean, come on, but I couldn't make a case, right? I mean, there's too many red flags. Crowded Trade for me is the one that I landed on. Here's what I'll say about Crowded Trade. The Gotham there, you see, finished second. You'll see the riders, Eric Cancel, just won the riding title at Aqueduct. And I'll say this, he's a great young rider, but the ride aboard Crowded Trade in that race was certainly not his best. He decided to rush the horse up early. to try to keep touch with the field, but he ended up hanging him 3 to 4 wide all the way around. You could see that also with that trouble indicator there. He did bobble at the start, so I think he may have just sort of panicked just a touch. All that extra ground that he covered, I really think came back to burn him late when he loses by the nose there to Weyburn. He still galloped out strongly, and for just his second career start, first going a mile, I thought he ran a bang-up race there, the 105 in the second career start. I just think if he takes another step off that one, Crowded Trade is going to be really, really tough here, and I think he may get lost in the shuffle a little bit. If we want to take a look also at the pace projector there and the true odds page, I think there could be, it says pace should unfold as expected for these types, and it's got Prevalence on the lead, but I thought there was a good chance at least that the horses on, especially Market Maven, I thought Market Maven was definitely going to go. He's shown speed in his last couple of races, and then Weyburn's going to have to stay close. I just thought you could see there in the middle section where you have the 6 with the 2 tucked in right there, right behind it. There's, I think this sets up really well for Crowded Trade to get that really nice, like ground saving stalking trip behind maybe 2 or 3 horses that are going for it. So for me, Crowded Trade is the horse in this race. And, the others to me all have come in with some red flags. And, to Ellis's point, yes, I'm a little leery about betting a horse with only 2 starts, but I like the fact that this horse's last start was in a stakes race in this company, shared company with Weyburn. And I think with a better trip, he ends up winning that race by a couple of lengths at least. So for me, Crowded Trade's interesting. Before we move on from this race, though, a horse that we haven't touched on, and I'm really curious, and I'll kind of throw it to you, Christina, because I think you mentioned him earlier. I just can't make sense of this horse. Candyman Rocket, the 7 horse. I mean, wins the Sam F. Davis, does it, like a good thing, and then just shows up with an absolute clunker in the Tampa Bay Derby. What do we do with him here?
Yeah, I looked at that replay because I was just wondering what went wrong with him, especially after those 2 big races. And I think there could have been a couple things that contributed to it. First of all, he ran really big when he broke his maiden. And I think if you look at his speed figures, even though he won the Sam Davis, he might have been on a little bit of a regression. He might have just been better than those horses and able to win despite that kind of step back in his speed figures. As far as the actual Tampa Bay Derby, I mean, he was wide. He moved a little early. He did get bumped once at one point, but then it was almost like Junior just eased him at that point. I don't know if he was concerned or just thought the horse was, done at that point and he wasn't going to ask him for anything else because he knew there was more to come. But I really think he basically eased him from the quarter pole home. So I don't think it's as bad of a race as it first looks, but I'd have a hard time betting him with any confidence coming back this weekend. I kind of would want to see one and see if he's going to start kind of moving back up in terms of his speed figures and just his overall effort.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Ellis, do you see enough of an excuse there in the Tampa Bay Derby that could justify using this horse at all right now?
I'm a man of many cliches, Dan. And one of my cliches is you can't get here from there. I could not possibly take a horse. I did pick him in that race, and I loved him, by the way, in the Sam F. Davis. I can't imagine improving from 11th to win or even finish second in this race. It could happen. It's certainly not totally impossible. But in big races like this, when you get the Derby, Breeders' Cup, top level races, you just don't go from the bottom to the top from one race to the next.
I give you so much credit for squeezing in a Sam F. Davis red board all these months later. Well done, Ellis. We're going to move on to Santa Anita. Great card on Saturday. And by the way, if you're in the California area, if you're in the Arcadia area, if you're near Santa Anita, fans allowed back this weekend, beginning on Friday. And then Saturday, the infield opens up. Of course, there are plenty of guidelines and limitations to the number of people allowed and what you could do when you get there. So go to Santa Anita Racetrack, go to their website and figure out if you do want to go there, what you have to do. But anyone just dying to get back out to a racetrack, really exciting weekend at Santa Anita. And of course, it all culminates with the Run Happy Santa Anita Derby, which is going to be the 10th race on Saturday. Christina mentioned this earlier. The moment Life is Good defected, that whole picture in California in terms of the Derby Trail just completely changed, because you have all these horses who were just chasing that one horse, and now that horse is completely just off the trail. So where do you go? I think the logical thing to do is go to Medina Spirit, because he was the horse who was closest to Life is Good time after time. But is there a case to make that maybe this opens the door to another horse? Christina, I know you like Medina Spirit quite a bit. Tell me how you see this race unfolding.
Yeah, I like him, and I don't want to knock the horse at all. He's kind of workmanlike, and I think because he's sort of been right there behind his stablemate a few times, he hasn't maybe received the credit he deserves for his performances. One thing that I thought was really interesting actually was just starting with the true odds page with him. I know he's fast. I know a lot of these horses in here are fast, but Bob Baffert, one of the biggest things he does is he uses that speed right from the get-go. And if you enter any race where the best horse has the most speed, everybody else is already behind the 8 ball just from the second they break away from the gate. And looking at just the early pace projector, it does put him on the lead. I really think that the Great One might press him a little bit. I think that looking at that last race in the San Felipe, they realized that even though he had a little bit of trouble out of the gate, he really didn't have that dimension to maybe come from off the pace or to sit kind of mid-pack. So I have a feeling that even though this is probably what it looks like, at least on paper, and as far as the numbers go, I think that the Great One is going to be pretty close to Medina Spirit. But I would not be surprised if he goes out there and just wires the field, because he is, very classy horse, and he appears to have the most speed. But the horse that I'm most interested in is Rock Your World. He's the 3. So let's go back to the past performances. I really love this horse. He made a bit of a fool out of me in his debut, because I had watched his works on XB TV, and I used their works quite a bit just in my handicapping. And I went on TVG and I said, look, this horse has so much talent. This horse is going to be so good as soon as he gets the distance. But the way he moves, I don't think he can win around one turn. I think they're setting up for something down the line. And I think that part of that was true. They were setting up to go 2 turns, but he was just classy enough to still win, and to win so impressively. Let's take a look at the replay from his second career start, which was the Pasadena. Again, we're on turf here. So his first 2 starts have come on the grass. This was the opportunity that he had to stretch out to a route of ground. It was a shorter field. Only 5 of them are going to line up. But I think if you watch just the way that, he kind of takes control as they turn for home, and how easily he wins this race, this is definitely a horse that is improving and that has a lot of class, and he has a lot of size about him. He's, again, as I mentioned with our horse in Keeneland, he's lighter on his feet, which I really like. A horse that's not going to be too hard on themselves, because I think as we're getting to the Derby picture, those big kind of Belmont types are so far back and take such a long time to get rolling. They're not always the horses that are going to win the prep races or win the actual Kentucky Derby. We're switching to the main track with Rock Your World. And let's start with his dam as far as her PPs. She's been a real producer. Ron McAnally conditioned her. He has continued to breed her. For the most part, the horses that she has produced as far as breeding have been turf horses, but she herself actually only won on the dirt. As you can see, her 3 lifetime wins came on the main track. I was very surprised by that. And I think I had seen her run a few times, but just didn't remember that she did well on the dirt. And she was also around in the age of synthetic too. So, imagine if she had the opportunity to run on the main track as much as some horses would now, that record could have been a little better. And then as far as the sire goes, I did pull up a little stat on Candy Ride. It's not as strong as I would have hoped for, but when you switch his horses from the turf to the dirt, you'll end up with a 17% win rate. I just love Candy Ride really on anything. I mean, if you get a Candy Ride on an off track, they do well. Candy Ride on a fast track, they do well. Candy Ride on the turf course, they do well. He's very versatile sire. And so I think you're seeing kind of some of those statistics, like right down the middle in all phases. If you have a classy enough horse, they're able to get the job done. So he's, to me, the horse that, maybe we haven't seen his best, Dan. We've only seen him on the turf. He works really well on the dirt. He looks just as effective on the main track in the mornings. So if I'm going to try to beat Medina Spirit, I think it needs to be with a horse that, we might see something new from this weekend.
Yeah, look, I like it. It's a fresh take on a race where I think a lot of people are just going to go with the logical play here, which is Medina Spirit. And I think you just made an incredible case based on pedigree specifically, but also based on just kind of how this horse has been doing it, and knowing that you've got a reliable trainer as well. He's probably not going to make this move unless they've got some confidence in the horse. So I like the play a lot. Ellis, I want to go to you for your take on this, but before we do, Christina mentioned something about the pace scenario, and I think that's important here, as it is with any race, and the great one potentially being more forwardly placed, putting some pressure on Medina Spirit. I think without a doubt, when you look at Parnelli, I tweeted this yesterday actually, when I saw blinkers on, and then I looked to the left and I saw Edwin Maldonado up, and I was like, oh boy, they're serious about getting to the front on Saturday. So you got those three at a minimum. You got to figure are gonna go early. You got the 5 horse Bad Ring Luck, who could put some pressure on, or at least be close. How much did you look into that pace scenario? Do you think it's still just a matter of Medina Spirit just being the best horse and surviving whatever they throw at him because he's still faster than all of them? Or did you think that opens it up for a horse from off the pace?
All of the above, practically. I mean, the first thing I do when I look at a race like this, any race with young horses, is you look to see, and I may have said this on previous webinars, I call it a picket fence. So you look real quick at horses that have won, and you look at their finish position and go back. So give me an example real quick. Let's go to number 7, Medina Spirit. We'll use that as a perfect example. If you go to his win on January 30th, at the end, he won by a neck. Now go right to left instead of left to right. He led from start to finish. You could say finish to start. You look at his debut, he led from start to finish. His other 2 races, yes, they're both against Life is Good, but he ran evenly throughout. He doesn't wear blinkers, but it tells me it's more of a need the lead type. Now go to 9, you mentioned the Great One, and you'll see he added blinkers 4 back. It immediately did what blinkers do. He finished 4th in the race, but he led from the start. Next time out in the future, he led from the start. Next time out, he was 2nd at the start. And he's outside, so he's got to use some position. And as you mentioned, then Parnelli's getting blinkers on. So I do think, I don't know how extra fast it's going to be, but I do think you have up to 3 horses that psychologically or need the lead types. Certainly that's one way to look at it. Then you start looking for stalkers or horses that are just going to fall into a trip automatically.
So who you got? Who did you land on?
Christine and I are on the same horse, Rock Your World. And I have a little different take on the sire stat. First of all, let me say, there's no question he can run on dirt. If you look at that workout on March 28th, right below his PP lines, you'll see the best of 82. 59.2 is fast, but that really puts it in perspective. That was a fast work. They wanted this horse to get a dirt workout in, which is good. The second question is, I did a little different sire stat. Go to Candy Ride. And I didn't look for turf to dirt. I wanted Gert route grade 1 stakes. And now we'll sort on official finish and say, does Candy Ride throw dirt horses that can get route grade 1s? Yeah, I think so. Vekoma, Game Winner, Gun Runner, Mastery, who was a big 3-year-old a couple years ago, Ollie's Candy. The percentage doesn't mean that much to me, or the ROI, but the fact that you see these horses we all know who are multiple route winners, there's no question, in spite of the fact that the dam, as Christina showed really greatly, by the way, that the dam ran on all weather and she's produced all weather and turf. There's no question. I love the pattern. Let's go back to his PPs. I love the pattern of sprint route, the pattern of Equibase speed figures on the 3 Rock Your World. You'll see 94 to 98. Now let's jump over to Medina Spirit real quick. Click on number 7 and you can compare. Medina Spirit's going to be much more heavily favored than Rock Your World. What's this? A 109 stretching out the first time, then a 97 in the Lewis in his 3-year-old debut, then a 98. This isn't the kind of pattern I want to see with a 3-year-old. Now, it's still, the 98 is good. It's one of the best in the race. It's the same as Rock Your World. It's better than any other horse's last race figure, but it's not a standout figure. And so we're looking for horses that continue to improve, as we especially started with the Bluegrass, as their speed figures go up during that 3-year-old campaign, hopefully peaking in the Derby. This isn't a monster. And Rock Your World is the opposite. Go back to him. You'll see the 94 to 98 figures, which I think set up really well. I want to also talk about Sadler's other horse, number 5, Back Ring Luck. And I thought about this for a long time. 20-1. I'm absolutely using this horse. We don't need to go to the sire stat, but Malibu Moon was the sire of Magna Moon, who won the Arkansas Derby, and Gormley, who won this race in 2017. So that takes care of that problem. He's by a Rahi mare. Started out in maiden claimers. Was claimed for $30,000 out of a 2-length win in his second 2-turn race, because the other one was a Keeneland. Was off for November to March, came back in the allowance race at Oaklawn, and I have not checked the owner line, but this is a great time to show the power of Stats Racelines. If our producer will be kind enough to click on that March 5th race, you'll see who the owner and trainer was for that race. Number 1 was PH Stables and Al Cates. Now you can close that and go back and look at the owner now. The owner now is Clark Cooper, Family Trust, Mia Familia, and Jacobson. That's a private purchase. They bought this horse after this allowance win, paid a decent amount of money, I'm sure, with the intent of putting it on the Derby Trail. And it just so happened that they were lucky enough. Just so happened they did it because that was a 97 Equibase speed figure race. Absolutely 20-1. I'm taking a shot with Back Ring Luck in my exactas with Medina Spirit and Rock Your World.
I like that. Yeah, this is one I haven't heard anyone really even mention, and I like that. Go with the private purchase angle and extreme confidence angle. I like that.
And I promise to breadboard it if it wins.
Oh, I know you will. I know you will. I would also like about this race is that we've got a little variety in our selection. I've got actually 2 completely different horses that I wanted to bring up. One I'll just mention briefly, the 2-horse Dream Shake. This horse I thought ran an enormous race for his second career start, last out in the San Felipe. Easily could have finished second in that race. You got to remember, it's the same race we've been talking about. Life is Good, stretch them out. Basically he had Dream Shake and Medina Spirit vying for that second spot. I thought for a second career race, stretching out for the first time like this, look, the horse has got a ton of upside, and I'm going to take a look at the board, what kind of price we're getting. But this horse strikes me as a horse that at the very least should hit the board coming off of that performance for a second career start. If he just takes one other step forward here, and if he gets a bit of a pace set up, because you can see on debut, he won going away, obviously from off the pace. Granted, that was a sprint, but assuming this horse likes to run from off the pace, you got to imagine he'll be close enough, but not too close to where he'll get burned up in some of that early speed. So Dream Shake to me, very appealing. Another horse I want to talk about is the 10-horse, Defunded. I thought ridden with confidence last out, pulled away from them under a hand ride despite some pretty significant bumping and jostling on the turn for home, which you could see there with that trouble indicator. And then I also did a trainer search for a guy you might have heard of named Bob Baffert. He occasionally trains good 3-year-old horses. And specifically with this search, I checked for males on the dirt who were maiden winners last out, like Defunded was, now going into graded stakes. So sort of similar to that Pletcher search I did earlier, but I specifically used this track. I used at Santa Anita. And you could see of the 11 horses that he's made this move with, 10 of them have finished in the money. And if you look at their actual finish, 10 of them have finished first or second. Like, you don't even have any third place finishes there. So they're either finishing first or second. That makes Defunded interesting to me. And if you watch the replay, I always tell people watch the, and that's the great thing with Stats Racelines. All you got to do is click on the video on the left side. You watch the replay. Watch the replay of how Defunded did it. It was kind of freakish in a way. I don't know what was in that field. I don't know if there were other potential stars in that field. Maybe not. But either way, the way he did it was so visually impressive. And you could see the history here of Bob Baffert taking these horses out of their maiden victories this time of year as well. You can look at some of those names. I'm sure you remember Concert Tour, who's probably your second or third choice at the moment to be the favorite in the Derby. We'll see what Essential Quality does, but if Essential Quality flops for any reason, Concert Tour is probably your Derby favorite at this point. And all the other great names there, Life is Good, Nadal, Medina Spirit. Look, it's late in the game, so you got to say, hey, look, this isn't just any graded stake. It's a graded stakes race to make it to the Derby. So there aren't many other options here at this point if you want to go to the Derby. But the fact that Baffert has the confidence in him, and he did it so easily last out, I think makes Defunded interesting, and he's also off the radar, I think, completely, amazingly, for a Baffert horse that's going to be ridden by Mike Smith. So that's one I like. By the way, Ellis, you mentioned our producer. I want to say to Bailey, who's doing a great job right now behind the scenes, running the gears here. I did say at the beginning here that this was the 10th race on Saturday, and I saw her looking at the 10th race, and I could tell, I was like, wait, oh man, I said the 10th race. It's the 8th race. The Santa Anita Derby is the 8th race on Saturday. Important note for those of you betting: do not punch these numbers in for the 10th race. It's the 8th race, and Bailey, I apologize. Christina, you will be taking us back even earlier into the Santa Anita Derby card on Saturday for your bonus play of the day. Tell us which race it is and which horse you like.
Yeah, we have 12 races total. It's such a good card. But I'm going to start with race 4 for a different angle, just to kind of warm up early in the day. If you're watching Keeneland or if you're playing the races at Aqueduct, you'll already be really honed in on the racing action at that point. So main special weights in race 4, 6.5 furlongs, which is a tricky distance for a lot of first-time starters. But there is a first-time starter that I really like in here, and that's the 5, Bobby Bow. I actually heard a little bit of buzz about this horse when I was in Florida last week, of all places, not here from home. But you could look up a number of angles on this horse to support the fact that he should run very well. We'll start with Bob Baffert. These angles, I almost feel like I'm cheating because it's just right to say Bob Baffert, first-time starters, 3-year-olds and up. You know it's going to be good, but just to like really hammer it home, 28%. It's a lot of horses, 37 from 130. So this is a very strong statistic for Bob Baffert. Well, this is what he does, right? But if you also take a look at the pedigree, let's start with the dam. Just click her. She has been very productive, auspicious. She's a daughter of Indian Charlie. And as far as her producing dirt sprint winners, so if you're talking about all the siblings, it isn't a whole lot of horses, but you're getting a good percentage there, 29% dirt sprint winners from the dam as far as the horses that she has produced and siblings. It's just a few, but still they are running. And then the sire, this is a son of Speightster. Speightster himself is a son of Speightstown. I wanted to know how Speightster was doing with his first-time starters, just overall, because I've found a few kind of hidden gems here and there in Southern California. I'll tell you, Phantom Wildcat is one that if you see any race with him in it, they're winning, and they're 20-1 every time. But as far as Speightster goes, his first-time starters, about 17%. So I think that's pretty fair when you consider that he's going up against some really tough competition and that have been, bred to some of the better mares in the country. Moving them up a little bit as far as the debut runners. His works are good. I've watched his works on XBTV. So if you're looking to kind of warm up a little bit and try to find a horse early on, I think Bobby Bow will run very well in race 4.
Christina, this is just the general thing, but I've heard you mention this here, and I've heard you mention it before. When you're watching works, I mean, for just the layperson, and even somebody like me, who mostly I spend 99% of my time just handicapping and then watching replays, I know what to look for when I'm watching replays. What kind of things do you look for when you're watching works?
Well, so a couple things. I like to try to first think about it in context of what we're doing today. So if I am watching a horse working on the dirt for a turf race, I'm going to be a little bit more forgiving. Sometimes you'll see a turf horse kind of come off the bridle a little bit on the dirt, meaning they're not really pulling on the rider. They're not really engaged in the bit. And I think you can see that sometimes if you see a loose rein or you see a horse that's just waiting for their prompting. I generally don't like seeing a horse that's off the bridle in a work, but if I'm talking about a turf horse, I'm kind of okay with it. When I'm looking at horses like this, we're talking about first-time starters, I want to see a horse that is almost a little bit aggressive. I want to see them on the bridle. I want to see them really kind of hitting the ground and anxious to do more. I want to see them have a little bit of speed in Southern California. I'd be looking at something different if I'm trying to find a horse that I think can win first time at Belmont. When I'm watching these works, which is what I'm doing for most of my time, I want a horse that has that speed, has that little bit of aggression, has some focus, and just looks like they're doing it pretty well within themselves. And then I'll also take into account whether or not a horse is working on their own or in company. You're always going to get more out of them in company. But if a horse can work really well by themselves, that is always a candidate to win first time out. There's so many little things, but I think for anybody out there that's curious about it, you just have to do it. You just have to take the time. Just promise yourself that every day when you're handicapping, you'll watch 1 or 2 works. And over time, you'll remember what you're seeing on the track. You'll remember what you've seen in the mornings, and you'll find what you like and what you don't.
That's interesting. Yeah. So a lot of nuance there. I mean, really just, there's no one catch-all. This is what to look for. You got to really kind of consider the context and the circumstances around what the horse is doing and what race the horse is targeting.
Yeah, and their running style too. If you've seen a horse that's run a few times and you know they're going to come from off the pace, that might be a lazier workhorse, and that's okay. But if you've seen a couple works from them, then you know when they start to look good or when they start to look like maybe they need a little break, perhaps.
All right. Good stuff. All right. Well, look, we've covered a lot of ground here. As always, you can catch Christina on TVG. And you can catch Ellis on Equibase and on America's Best Racing and on a million other places, including Santa Anita Road to the Derby live on America's Best Racing on Saturday. We'll be live streaming the Run Happy Santa Anita Derby in partnership with Santa Anita. A really fun collaboration, second screen. It's essentially a watch party. We're drinking beer, we're talking horses, and we're watching races, and we're betting. I should say we're betting.
Can I join?
You can join. I mean,
I start drinking a beer at race 8.
I always assume you're just too busy. I'm like, I can't bother Christina on a Saturday. Like,
Listen, I'll pop in if I can just use my phone and kind of jump in.
You can. You get the kids in. I mean, I would say it's a family show. Aside from the drinking and betting, it's a family show.
They're used to it around here.
So, and again, you could catch me at America's Best Racing, of course. But anyway, wanted to remind you, if this is your first time kind of getting the walkthrough on Stats Race Lens, you see things that are interesting, that pique your interest, you can always reach out to Ellis. You could find him on Twitter at UberCapper. And now would be the time to just kind of poke around, dabble a little bit. If you want a subscription, if you haven't had one before, you go to Stats Race Lens, and for 1 month right now, you get a subscription for only $1. You just use promo code SRLM1E, SRLM1E. That's for new customers only. You get the Stats Race Lens month-long subscription for $1.
Unlimited for the month, right?
There you go. There you go. I was expecting to see like a little thing and like a sparkle in your teeth, like when you said unlimited. That was good. You said it with that toothpaste.
I forgot to put my grill on. Sorry.
That's Saturday. People have to tune in, and for those, so they don't felt left out. People who have had subscriptions before, open to everyone, 50% off. Ellis, it starts with a U. Say the word.
Unlimited
quarterly subscription for everyone interested, using promo code Derby Trail 2021. Derby Trail 2021, 50% off in unlimited. Christina, you want to try it?
Unlimited. It's not even in quotes, is it? It's like it needs a whole thing.
I like that.
Unlimited quarterly subscription, 50% off using Derby Trail 2021. This has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate everyone who's tuned in, who's watching. Feel free to reach out to any of us with questions about Stats Race Lens, but really just reach out to Ellis on that. But if you have any questions on the races in general, we're always here for you. Wish you a lot of luck this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend, and throughout the Derby Trail and into the Derby and beyond. For now, for Christina and Ellis, I'm Dan Tordjman. We'll see you next time.